Hey friends, welcome to episode 602 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I am Kevin Huntsberger, joined this week by Chad Smart. But Chad, we also have another special guest this week. And the topic we're talking about Mick Foley, and right straight from his waistband, we have Sacco. Hey everybody.
Oh, it's going
You
to be
guys
one of
know
those shows.
these this is a clean sock, by the way. So anyway, we're going to talk about Mick Foley, and as full disclosure, I we try to talk more about retro back in the day kind of wrestling. Sometimes we tie in current events and things that are happening on the current product of WWE, AEW, whatever the case may be, and that is kind of what inspired the Mick Foley conversation. We're going to go back though 30 years because it was 30 years ago this spring that he uh, went to the WWE and became kind of a household name eventually. But we're going to get to that in a minute. I'm saying all that to say Clash in Italy is happening this afternoon. We're recording Sunday morning, so no Clash of Italy talk is going to be happening here. But Chad, have you had a chance? I know you sent me a picture, and it looked like you were watching some of the AAA show. Did you get to watch all of it?
I didn't. I actually turned it off during the main event. One, because I ran out of time. We were recording this, and I'm sure it's different if you watch the show live, but
Hmm.
watching it after the fact, the YouTube ads are just, to
Oh.
me, they're insufferable because there are two. I mean, it's WWE. I guess you expect ads, but there were so many, and it was at least like 45 seconds to a minute before you could skip them.
Oh.
And I got tired of, and I realized that I mean, the main event was kind of predictable and who was going to win anyway. And uh, yeah, I just,
So you know what happened.
I did, yeah, and I just read the result. And what happened. I mean, the first couple matches, I think there were four matches on the show. I watched the first two. The first match, Laredo Kid and Ray Phoenix, was a good match. Again, I don't want to be negative and say it's predictable because I hate when people complain about predictability in wrestling because we've discussed it before. Predictability doesn't mean bad. It just,
Hmm.
um,
What about the
but the
milkman and the paperboy?
the what? The Bill and
The
the
milkman and the
Paperboy.
paperboy.
You know, whatever happened to them? I think
Speaking of that, what's the next line in that lyric?
whatever
Whatever
happened to
happened to predictability, the
predictability,
milkman, the
the man, the
paperboy, and
Paperboy,
is it
late
even
night.
TV?
Uh, is it or late night TV?
Oh, that makes okay.
Well, thankfully we live in an age and time when everything is.
Well, and I've never found a definitive answer on it, so we're talking about the Full House theme. If for those who are uh, wondering how we got sidebarred here, um, but yeah, predictability
Yeah,
and
the milkman, the paperboy, the evening TV.
the evening TV.
Yeah.
I always thought it was even MTV.
Oh, nope. But I
Which,
did
I
see
mean,
that.
today you could say that. Have we had this conversation before? I feel like we may have. I don't
I
know.
don't think so, but I was going to say I saw just about 10 minutes before we started recording that Jesse and the Rippers have pulled out of the America 250 State Fair performance. So what are you going to do? But anyway, AAA, it was fine. It was, it's I've never been a huge, and this is going to be weird coming from me as a big Chikara fan, and even
Hmm.
with the regard, I've never been a big Lucha fan.
Uh,
Um, there's just something about, again, I think comes back into presentation, and Lucha to me is at times, I think more so than Chikara and AEW, too choreographed to where
mhm.
sometimes it is hard to suspend disbelief. So
So going back 30 plus years ago now,
yeah,
when Eric Bischoff kind of introduced the United States, at least, to the Lucha product through
through ripping off Paul
Nitro.
Heyman, yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, but a grander stage. You know,
yes,
admittedly, the it looked much different than what we were seeing on Raw. Uh,
Mhm.
were you a fan then when it was
I
something different?
was,
You were a
and again, I don't know.
W.
Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe it's
Or because it was in
it was
smaller doses.
fresh,
It's
smaller
all,
doses.
with,
Maybe.
Lucha now, at least with AAA, it feels like, and I don't know how it is now with WWE, but
Mhm.
at one time, that's pretty much the whole presentation, right? It's all, there's not a
Everything's the
lot
same.
of variety that you
Yeah,
would get on an AEW or a WWE show.
that's a good point too. Yeah, when you only have one lucha match and then you have American style matches, could be different. But yeah, I mean, once you saw Rey Mysterio and Psicosis and La Parca and the Villano or Villanos, and I mean, I never doubted El Dandy. I thought he was always
Yes. Lots of callbacks on this week's episode, and we'll probably.
there. Speaking of callback, I'm guessing you didn't watch Collision. Um,
No,
yeah, I don't know if you've read the results, but
I
I thought
haven't.
it was funny. Tommaso Ciampa is now feuding with Chris Jericho,
Ah.
and so he attacked him. Ciampa attacked Jericho on Dynamite, and then came out on Collision, and he's like, I don't like Chris Jericho, and I have 1004 reasons why. And he had this big long sheet of paper. And he's like, I hate this, and I hate your arm bars. And I was like, that's a deep cut for the fans.
The fans, I'm assuming, pop for that.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think the best though was the people in the front row who had three giant white poster board signs for Orange Cassidy, and it's like whatever, wherever, Orange Cassidy, ITY instead of IDY.
We've established wrestling fans are not the best sellers, so.
Yeah.
Well, as mentioned, we are going to be talking about Mick Foley and uh, Chad. What are your earliest memories of Foley? Do you? I can go back to the aftermags in the late '80s and remember pictures of him with, and I think by this time, USWA was not broadcasting in the St. Louis market like it had been at one time. So I remember reading about him before actually seeing him in the ring as Cactus Jack or Cactus Jack Manson. And then, of course, the jump to WCW, the feud with Sting and teaming with Abdullah
Mhm.
Butcher. Those are my core memories of Foley. What about you?
I believe was it Global that he was in, and he had a stable with Barry Horowitz and
Hmm.
um, I can't remember what I want to say the conglomeration, but that's AEW. But it was like the I don't know. I would have looked it up had I remember that we were talking McFoley today. But do you know what I'm talking about though? Do you remember
Yes,
that?
I
Or
do.
okay.
Actually, now that you said that, I do remember that.
So yeah, I remember seeing him there, and then obviously, like I said, WCW coming in, um, the feud with Sting, the feud with the Nasty Boys, um, and yeah, and then I remember, when he came to WWF, I didn't see any of his ECW stuff because that was before I um, discovered ECW.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I thought bringing him in to WWF as Mankind was an interesting choice um, because I knew who he was. Like when Goldust showed up, it was a couple weeks before I realized that was Dustin.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, face paint, it throws me off. It's like sunglasses. But yeah, so that's my.
Well, and it is interesting because I do remember, this was in '96, 30 years ago. It's hard to believe they bring him in. And I was uh, reading the rec.sports.pro wrestling or whatever
Mm,
the thing was back in the day on the internet. And I thought it was an interesting move too, because I did like the Cactus Jack character. And, again, back then we were all, you and I are of that age where we're watching and consume. We talked last week about fan fatigue, but we were consuming a lot of wrestling products. So I guess in that time we would have been considered hardcore fans because we knew, maybe didn't know his name was Mick Foley, but we knew Cactus Jack was Mankind.
mhm.
And it was curious why they rebranded him and did all that. But, 30 years later, it obviously makes a ton of sense because, you know, you've got the Mankind character here as one face of Foley, and then I've got an old dude Love here who evolves. I don't have any Cactus Jack merch, but then Cactus Jack, WWE brings Cactus Jack into the fold too. So the three faces of Foley, and I think you and I have differing opinions on some of this, but and that'll make for an interesting conversation, I think. But I loved the '98 Royal Rumble where they did the three faces of Foley, and I think you've said here before that you were not
Yeah.
as a fan of that. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about did you just not like it because it was taking a Rumble spot from others, or did you just not like the concept of the three characters?
I mean, I thought the concept of the three characters was interesting, and the way that they brought in, Dude Love to be a throwback to what Mick Foley wanted to be as a teenager,
Hmm.
and with the home movie aspect added to that. Obviously, I like Cactus Jack, and so when they brought him in, and I was actually at the Raw in St. Louis where Cactus Jack appeared after the show went off the air. I don't think it
Oh,
was until SmackDown that he officially um, on camera became Cactus Jack. But and I've read, they said what made that moment was when Foley came out and he's like, you're right, Triple H, Mankind can't beat you, but I know somebody who can. And he takes a thing off. He's got the flannel underneath, and he's like, Cactus Jack. All Foley did was take his shirt off,
hmm.
but Triple H sold it as, oh my gosh, it added to the mystique of Cactus Jack. Whereas if Triple H would have just been like, you're the same person, like
Yeah,
that wouldn't have
right.
sold the story. So, and I think that's one of those little, that's what I'm looking for. But it's those little details in
Uh-huh.
storytelling that are important.
Yeah.
Um,
Was
but to
that
the
was
nine,
that during was that after their original feud, and was this when Triple H was champion and leading into the Hell in a Cell, or did they do that before all that? I can't remember if Cactus Jack came back more than once.
it was after. I mean, it was after the initial feud, and it was
Okay.
with when Triple H was with Stephanie, and they were
Okay.
like,
Okay. Okay.
because those things like they had fired. I think they had fired Foley,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the wrestlers quit or threatened
Mm.
to quit, if I remember correctly. But um, as for the '98 Rumble spot, I don't like it took a spot away from another wrestler because I mean it's just I don't know. But to me, it again, it goes back to the suspension of disbelief where you have these three characters that are in the Rumble, and conveniently Foley gets eliminated before the next personality
Hmm.
is supposed to come out. You know, um, I think if you want to do that, what would have made it, I guess, more believable. And granted, I believe that Rebel started off with Foley and Terry Funk,
Yeah.
right? They were
Yeah.
one and two. So you needed like Cactus or Mankind to be one or two. But I think it would have been better had Dude Love been the first Foley character. And then when he got eliminated, then you cut backstage and you see Foley attacking somebody and turning into Mankind. And then finally Cactus Jack to do an evolution of Dangerous Persona. That may have worked better.
Yeah. It is hard to believe. Like, I've got, and I have more than this, but I have Foley's two first books. The one just simply called "Have a Nice Day," and then Foley is Good. And I don't know if you've read either of these or any of his
I
books,
did.
but
I mean, it's been 20 years, but
yeah,
yes.
it's been a long time. But he is so like this is what I like about Mick Foley is like there is uh, because I've talked before probably too much about how I don't like the hardcore wrestling, like the
Mm.
exploding ring and the barbed wire ropes and the bats and the thumbtacks. I'm not into that at all. And um, someone who was so into it as a performer, but then you see that other side, and we've talked about the Saint Mick and the
Mhm.
Christmas documentary and the Santa Claus story that he did and all that. And to me, that's what makes him, why I hold him in such high regard, is because there's like this whole other layer to who he is. And whether you agree or disagree with his outlook on life and or politics or any of that kind of stuff, to me, he's just such an interesting person behind the hardcore stuff, because you would not expect, you look at him today and you do see the missing teeth and the missing ear, and that this
Mhm.
guy has been through hell in the ring. But to read his words or to hear him speak when he was doing the podcast with Conrad, it was one of my favorite shows to listen to, because he is such a great storyteller. And so um he retired, obviously retired, air quotes, obviously, that first time at such an early, was back for WrestleMania, what, a month later, 6 weeks later. So he's been one of those guys, though, that has been in and out. And I think that if you listen to JR stories and even Mick's stories, Vince McMahon almost brought him in to disappoint JR. And I think it's, again, another one of those stories of where someone gets the opportunity and they run with it. And Foley could have come in there and pouted over the whole Mankind, not getting to be Cactus Jack, but he's turned it into a three-figure, when I say three-figure, I mean action
Mhm.
figure, where
Mhm.
he's got all these different personas, and they just actually, what, a month ago, released the Chelsea Green Mick Foley 2-pack where he's
Mhm.
Cactus Jack and she's dressed like Cactus Jack in the homage. So I I don't know, man. I think 30 years ago, or 35 years ago, when I was watching him wrestle Van Hammer at Clash of the Champions, I would not have imagined he'd become such a beloved figure in professional wrestling.
Yeah. Do you think having amnesia and wandering the streets of Cleveland helped him prepare for?
Yeah, that may have worked in his favor. But
Yeah.
were you
Or is it because didn't he come out of a box and attack Sting? I know Abdullah did, but
Abdullah? I think it was just Abdullah. I think
oh, okay.
Cactus was there to announce, or was there presenting the present.
That's right. Yeah, I couldn't remember if in another. I knew Abdullah came out that time, but I didn't couldn't remember if Cactus had come out
I
earlier or
don't think
something.
he did. I don't think
But
he did, but a fun trope in the world of professional
yeah,
wrestling.
I
Thing in
need
a
to come out of
box,
a box.
which we've seen with Danhausen. So Um, but yeah, I mean, Foley could have been very easily disregarded as a comedy wrestler, but he comes in to the WWE, as we mentioned, in '96, and immediately attacks The Undertaker. Um, and I thought, The Undertaker was going to annihilate him. And I feel like even 30 years later, I think that Cactus Jack, or I'm sorry, Mick Foley, Mankind, may be definitely top three, but may be Undertaker's greatest rivalry, because you didn't expect Foley to get the upper hand, and he did a few
Mhm.
of those matches early on. Beats him in the Boiler Room Brawl at SummerSlam, of course. Paul Bearer turns, and that was all very interesting too, because Paul Bearer seemed very, he and the Undertaker were never going to part, because what else is
Mhm.
Paul Bearer going to do? But I feel like this was an era where they were able to evolve some of these characters to do more than what they were maybe stereotyped to do, and
Mhm.
becoming Mankind's manager and the evilness of Mankind, and then again evolving, and the sock gets over, and he's doing all these other crazy things. So I think that's partly a testament to the character, or the person behind the character, obviously, but then also creative. At times I feel like they were kind of in a predicament where they had to maybe think outside the box and try some of these maybe off the wall or more bizarre things, and look at the rating shift that happened the night that Tony Schiavone said that'll put butts in.
Mhm.
Where were you when that was going on? Were you watching live that night?
I'm pretty sure I was. I mean,
But you were
we
mostly
would,
a Nitro guy, so did you change
yeah.
the channel, or did you keep watching Nitro?
No, I think we kept watching that because we would watch Nitro and record Raw, and then
Mhm.
watch Raw immediately after Nitro.
Yeah.
Um, so that's probably what I did. I'm trying to remember exactly where I would have been because that
January of
was
'99.
January of '99. Okay, I was thinking it was December.
Well, it
Um,
technically happened in December, but the broadcast was January of
was in
'99.
January. So I may not have been watching live because I would have been um,
Would you have been
at
home for Christmas
SIU.
break?
Maybe I don't remember. So no, because '99 I had moved out by then, so I wouldn't have gone home. Yeah, I don't remember where I was. I just
Yeah.
remember it happening because the internet.
Well,
So
and again, this is all obviously big time into the Attitude Era, and it's after the King of the Ring Hell in a Cell match where he
mm,
gets tossed off of that. And uh, did you ever think
was
he
it?
would be a heavyweight champion, the world champion in WWE, considering the look and the presentation, whereas you had Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker
Yeah.
in the era that were all champions as well?
I mean, probably in the moment, no. Looking back, again, that Attitude Era, the titles became hot potatoes. So it just seemed like everybody, if he was going to be in feuds with the top stars, it would make sense for at some point for him to get the title. But um, and then I think obviously when he did at halftime heat, that's the
Mhm.
pinnacle of best title winning moments in cinematography. But um, no, I probably would not have expected. Even if he'd come in as Cactus Jack, I wouldn't have expected a title because I think he's a good hand. He's somebody that you can put in there to have a good match and have a feud with. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think even like his ECW tag title reign wasn't meant to be um, a oh my gosh, this is the best guy in the tag team division type
Mhm.
moment. So,
Yeah, I can remember the fall of '98 leading into Survivor Series. I think it was maybe the pay-per-view after SummerSlam. I don't remember what it was called. It was there was a triple threat cage match. And it may have even been on
mm,
Raw. I don't remember now, but it was Ken Shamrock, Mick Foley or Mankind and The Rock. And Dwayne is just kind of getting into that cocky heel nation of domination, and so we're seeing an evolution, I think, and it did feel like to me, thinking back almost 30 years and watching, remembering that match, I remember thinking they're building one of these or more of these guys to be the next guy. I could just feel that because it was the Undertaker, Kane, and Stone Cold. I think it was
mm-hmm,
that match where they both Kane and the Undertaker pinned Stone Cold, and that's
mm,
what leads to them holding the title up. But I remember watching that match, and I don't know why, but it stuck out to me that one of these, and I did not think it was going to necessarily be Mankind. I thought they were going to go with Ken Shamrock, quite honestly. And of course, then the Deadly Games tournament happens, and you were at that.
mm-hmm,
I remember thinking, watching that, because I did buy that pay-per-view from where we were living in Alabama, and I remember watching that and thinking, um, that The Rock was going, I'm sorry, that Mankind was going
mm-hmm,
to, or I thought that The Rock was going to prevail at the end, but as the baby face, and then
mm-hmm,
instead we get the big screw job on Mankind, and um, that era too is you talk about hot potatoing the championships, but there was a lot of hot potatoing of uh, babyface versus
yeah.
heel personas between he and The Rock himself, and then Big Show comes in eventually, and I think still holds the record for the most heel turns in the history. But to me, that was looking back on it, and I know long term the Attitude Era. We've both discussed, in our opinions, it doesn't hold up. But there were so many things that happened in the Attitude Era
Mm-hmm,
that made an impact 30 years later that it can't be denied as being an integral part
yeah.
of the wrestling business, I think. But what were you thinking watching did you think he had a shot that night of winning? Because after that, I thought, okay, he didn't win it here. He's never going to win it. But then, of course,
Mm-hmm,
they do the revenge tour, if you will.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think I probably expected Foley to win the tournament, just the way the storyline was going. Obviously they made it all look like
Right. Yeah.
they were going to make sure Foley walked out.
Yeah.
Um, and little side note, the best part of that show is one of my friends that I went with, who is a good artist and has designed album cover artwork for bands that you've probably never heard of and probably would not be into. It's really hardcore metal type stuff.
Hmm.
But he drew a picture of The Rock with a raised eyebrow in the shape of the arch, and it said like the real arch of St. Louis.
Oh, nice.
And after the show was over, we're walking out, and Tom is just this again. I think he had like green hair at the time, nose rings, like just a guy that if you saw on the street, you would probably cross the street to avoid. Even though very nice guy, but
Yeah.
just very personality wise. And and he's like, you walking, and this little kid is walking away, and Tom just goes up to him. He's like, "The Rock was my favorite," and he turned his back on me, and he called me trailer trash. I'm going back to my trailer and taking down all my posters of him. And this kid's just like, uh-huh.
Did he save the
Yeah.
poster?
I don't know what he did with the post. I mean, he walked out with it, but yes,
Yeah.
it was. That, and then the other poster that he drew was a picture of the Boss Man bent over with Austin shoving the nightstick into a uncomfortable place. Yeah,
Love
uh,
it.
yeah. But no, and again, I think like you said, I think the Attitude Era as a whole, the parts, the sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts. Is that the saying?
Yeah, I think.
Um, but I think Deadly Games Survivor Series 98 is probably the best storytelling pay-per-view ever
Yeah.
because the build up to it, that that payoff had been building for like 2-3 months. And with Shane McMahon being on heat and being removed and being turning on Austin during the tournament as well. Um, but yeah, I don't think, even if Foley had won the title there, never would have expected, a long term
Yeah.
reign. Like, but and then when you got screwed over by the McMahons, I think that made fans wanted to see, and I think it probably led again to when he does win the title and being on a taped episode to where WCW could say, "Oh
Hmm.
yeah, he's going to win the title. That's going to put butts in seats." I think the fans had come around on Foley and wanted to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they did because everybody tuned in, but had it happened on a live show where WCW couldn't spoil it, would it have had the same overall impact? I don't know.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think that he became that lovable underdog because he looked like, he didn't. I don't know that you could have got that sympathy for a Rock or a Stone Cold, but Foley just
Mm-hmm.
looked like that guy you wanted to see win. You wanted him to
Mm-hmm.
have that opportunity or that chance. And I, uh, again, going from that hardcore style to then becoming more of this lovable figure in wrestling and someone that rides roller coasters and loves Christmas and dresses up eventually like Santa Claus. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think the number of injuries and the things that he had put himself through caught up with him, and we didn't get a whole lot more with him actively, like a regular competitor in WWE after that.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up eventually retiring, as we mentioned, in that match against Triple H in the Hell in a Cell in 2000. Comes back for WrestleMania 2000 to lackluster. There's different stories of that was supposed to be Chris Jericho's spot or, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case was. Eventually, he becomes more of a GM and an ambassador coming and going, having a few matches here and there along the way throughout. Eventually goes to TNA where I'd forgotten he won the TNA championship. Do you remember this time in TNA when he's over there and goes on to win the belt?
I mean, I remember him being in TNA, but I don't remember anything
Yeah. It
happening
was
in
a
TNA.
short run. He beat Sting in a cage and then
Mm-hmm.
ended up losing it, I think, to Kurt Angle just a couple months later. But again, one of those guys that was a WWE, when he eventually went over and became embraced and loved by everyone,
Mm-hmm.
one of those guys that you thought was going to be a franchise player or whatever. But then he leaves and goes to TNA, but then he eventually comes back and does the co-GM thing with Stephanie and
Yeah.
again, he's in and out for decades in WWE and then Earlier this year, he announced that he was parting ways with WWE when his Legends deal expired, and I think everybody and their mom knew that he's headed to AEW, and then of course leading up to um, uh, God damn it, Double or Nothing. I'm like, I'm not going to have a for Double or Nothing. You know, it's announced that he's
Yep.
going to be part of the pre-show with Renee Paquette. Um, gets involved in some way with MJF, and I don't remember if we recorded this part or if I told you before the show. I thought he was going to interfere and cost MJF the
Mhm.
match to lead to a match against MJF. I still think there's going to be some physicality, but tell me your thoughts because we didn't really talk about your impression of Foley's appearance with AEW. So the floor is yours. Tell me what you think of being in AEW.
I I understand why he's there. I don't. I I'm trying to figure out how to say this without talking out of both sides of my mouth
Hmm.
because I think his interaction with MJF helped a little bit with the MJF Darby Allin match.
Hmm.
Um, I would have liked to have seen maybe something with Foley and Darby as well, and Foley being like, don't take these risks. It's not worth it. Whatever. Um, but I don't think AEW needs Foley as a full time. Like I think because they're in New York, had they wanted to bring him in as a special guest, as a one off, that would be fine.
Hmm.
So until I see further how they integrate him into like I watched the pre-show without audio, so I didn't catch any of his and Renee's banter.
Hmm. And it
So
was
I
just the
can't
two of them, right?
it was just the two of them. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I can't say like, oh, he did a good job of promoting the show and helping build interest in the matches. I did watch with audio when he confronted MJF, and we'll see going forward. I expected him to come out during the main event as well, and I think had he come out after Darby did the coffin drop off the staging um, to check on Darby to
Hmm.
see and like then if MJF would have like maybe kicked him or pushed him off to the side and took Darby into the ring to win the match, that might have been um, a way to use him. But again, not know without knowing what their plan is, if Foley's going to be involved long term in storytelling, if he's going to be physically involved, which I have zero interest in that aspect of Foley. I don't.
And tell me why. Why is it the age thing? Is it the what is it? Because before you even answer that,
Yeah.
let's go back to the beginning of the
Okay.
conversation because I never got
Okay.
a take from you.
Okay.
Overall, your impressions of Mick Foley as a wrestler from Cactus Jack days to Mankind to Dude Love, like overall, where do you have him? And I'm not going to say Mount Rushmore, obviously, but is he in your top 10, top 50? You know, where do you rank him as an overall favorite of yours?
I mean, I would say definitely probably top 50, maybe top 25. I
Hmm.
don't know about top 10. I mean,
So
I
you
like
don't
Foley.
dislike him.
No, I don't do that. No, I enjoyed Foley. I was, happy to see him come into WWF when he came in. I wanted to see him succeed there.
Hmm.
Um, and I like, everything he did in the Attitude Era, and even as a GM, I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Um, so my feeling right now on Foley being in AEW is nothing personal,
Yeah.
say. It's more of the age factor, the injury factor.
Hmm.
I mean, Foley was never Kenny Omega or Ricochet,
Yeah.
or even Cody Rhodes in the ring,
Yeah.
but he played to his strengths, and I think those strengths have been diminished
Yes.
because of the style of wrestling that he did.
Right. Sure.
And so I think, you know, going back to the view on the Attitude Era as a whole, if you watch a lot of, especially WWF main event matches during that time, it's a lot of punching and kicking and smoke and mirrors to get, you know, for the match to be, I don't want to say good, but it wasn't. It's not move. You know, it's not high spot after high spot. It's
Mm-hmm.
and I think AEW it is for the most part a wrestling company. It's where the
Mm-hmm.
best wrestle apparently, and they have the world's best coffee and the most famous hamburgers, if you believe all signs. Um, so I think Foley being involved, you're going to get a step back in the quality of match that AEW is known for. And again, it's like on top of that, it's Mick Foley is what,
He's
62,
60.
60?
Yeah,
Okay.
he turned 60.
He
I think he by now he might be 61. Last year he turned 60, so
wow. You're
some at
closer in
some
age
point. I
than
don't
I thought.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember
Uh,
his actual birthday, but he was born in 65, so.
okay. Um, I lost my train of thought because it just blew my mind that Foley is not older than me than I thought he was.
I know, right? It's like Will Sasso's younger
That's
than that.
yeah. Um, but I think it's one thing for Edge and or Cope and Cage to be, 52, 51, 3, whatever they are, and still going.
Hmm.
AJ Styles retired at 47, 48, I think,
Hmm.
around his age.
Yep.
But for someone to be 60 and come in and feuding with someone who I think MJF just turned 30.
Yes.
I think to have a competitive match, and I'm not saying like there aren't any 60-year-olds out there that could stand toe to toe with a 30-year-old.
Right.
But I think what you're presenting in the company is, unless MJF just plays chicken shit heel and backs off a lot. So this was I'm kind of jumping around. Wood fully retired and then started coming back for the occasional feuds that were, I think, designed to help put over newer talent.
And I'm glad you're talking about that because I just wrote those down, so I had forgot to bring them up earlier. So
Okay.
yeah.
Where it's like, I think it's a law of diminishing returns
Mhm.
because, it's if Foley comes back and wins, well, then you just put over, a retired older guy or against someone that you're hoping to be
Mhm.
in the company for a while. And if the younger guy wins, well, great. He just beat a broken down old man.
Right.
I and I don't, I mean, that's being very like critical thinking and not just enjoying entertainment value of wrestling. So I don't
Well,
know if
I,
I don't know how many fans actually look at it through those
yeah.
lenses.
But I think in that era, Randy Orton, the
Mm,
Randy Orton feud specifically, that's
yeah.
2004. Foley, what is that, 20 years ago? So Foley's in his early
Mm,
40s at that point,
yeah.
or not even 40. And then with Edge, same thing. That was 20 years ago. We were at that WrestleMania where he and Edge wrestle. And I felt like in both of those instances, I would have been fine with Foley winning one or some of those matches. I remember being
Yeah.
pretty stunned that the Rock and Sock Connection lost to Flair, even though it was a handicap match, they lost to Flair, Batista, and Randy Orton. But then you look at it 20 years later and you see Randy Orton pins Mankind or Mick Foley
Mm,
in that match. And then Edge, of course, wins that hardcore match at WrestleMania 22. Um, so it made sense, and I don't feel like the feud with Orton diminished him going into the feud with Edge because, again, in my mind, he was still built up. But now we're
mm,
talking 20 years later, and it is a 60-year-old man, but it's also the heavyweight champion of this company. And we don't know if
mm,
they're going to have a match, but they're interacting, they're touching.
yeah.
And that's why I thought it would have. And again, we're armchair booking this. We're Sunday morning or Monday morning quarterbacking it, um, or Monday morning booking it, I should say. It today as we're talking about this, and we don't know what the long-term plan is, but it would have made sense for Foley to cost MJF the match because then there's no title at stake. There's no,
Mm,
MJF is going to, if they wrestle, destroy Foley in a match. But
Yeah.
you really know if he's still the champion. They're not going to put, I wouldn't think Tony Khan would put the belt
Yeah.
on a 60-plus-year-old man, even if it were for a week or, doing it on Wednesday at Dynamite and then taking it back off him Saturday at Collision. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking too much here, but I don't think that's the plan. But again, I agree. And it's something different if it's an Edge or a Christian and Cope thing where they're regularly part of the program. But Foley, I
Mhm.
don't know, has had a match, like a match since that TNA run. I don't think he wrestled at all when he came back to WWE that last time, but I could
Mhm.
be wrong about that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the last Foley match. Um, and yeah, I think that's another good point is that if he gets into a match um, with MJF while MJF is champion, I mean, yeah, obviously you could do a non-title match and
Hmm.
just say, and and MJF could easily talk and say like, look, yeah, you're a legend, but you don't deserve a title just because you're a legend. Like, um, but then again, it, I just don't see and then this is why I'm not a booker, because I would hope if they do this, I'm sure they can work something out better than what I'm thinking right now. But
Hmm.
I just don't see what the positives of that match would be. Because, like I said, if Foley wins, you're a 3-time world champion, hottest star,
Hmm.
your quarterback one, as he, Cody Rhodes likes to say. I think that's what he says.
Yeah,
Um,
QB1.
QB1. You just got beat by a retired guy, and if MJF wins, cool. MJF just beat a guy who hasn't wrestled in 10 years. So um,
I don't want to be critical of Tony Khan, but you know, and maybe this is what all the fans wanted with the Sting retirement. People, I'd listen to the talking heads that are all, uh, for lack of a better word, shills for AEW. Conrad does not speak negatively of AEW ever. And that's a fact. That's just, and that's his
yeah.
opinion, and he's, whatever.
Mm.
But, yeah, we both questioned the Cena retirement and Goldberg, people complained about that. Um, but we got that storybook happy ending with the Sting retirement. He retired as the tag team champion.
Mm.
If we do a Foley's last match, which I think this is kind of the Foley redemption tour, he didn't get that in WWE. They didn't deem it safe. He
Mm.
has lost 100 pounds and he is physically looking better than he did when he was still closely associated with WWE. So maybe this
Mm.
is that feel good moment that the fans, does a legend have to win their last match? I mean, the Ric Flair last match almost 4 years ago, looking back on that and the physical shape he was in, that match probably should not have happened.
I don't think the word probably needs to be in that
Well,
sentence.
I don't want to sound like a complete ass, but I mean, you and I, as we've talked about ad nauseum, we were content with that WrestleMania 24 match. That could have
Yeah.
been it for Flair, and we would have been happy as Flair fans for life. But he came back, he wrestled in TNA. And again, I know I'm not judging anyone for coming back after saying they're retired, but that was almost the perfect send-off. Like you could not complain, in my opinion,
Yeah.
about that send-off compared to Cena or AJ or Bill Goldberg, for example. I think Foley's looking for Kurt Angle comes to mind too. So I think Tony books it more as a fan versus
Mhm.
as what's our next move.
Yeah, business. Yeah.
I don't think the Young Bucks were necessarily hurt by losing in the Sting last match, but I also don't think it would have hurt Sting and Darby to have lost the belts back to
Mhm.
the Bucks.
Yeah.
So, it's six of one, half dozen of the other, I guess. But I can't imagine if Foley does do the last match that I wouldn't think they'd put the belt on him, especially because he's got no associate. You know what I mean? Like he's a WWE guy coming in.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
wasn't like uh, grassroots AEW original or anything like that that kind of went away and then came back. So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you can look at it in that regard. Cage and Cope just won the tag titles.
mhm.
Cope was pretty much a WWE guy. Christian had left to go to TNA to prove himself.
Right, right.
Um, so he had that association outside of WWE, whereas Edge had always been, you know, thought he would be a lifer.
Yeah.
But it took 2 years, and granted, he broke his leg in there and was out for several months. And um, there's a child being tortured way off screen. I don't know if you can hear it, but
I don't hear it.
okay, good. It's just very distracting. But it took 2 years for Cope to win a title in AEW,
Mhm.
and I mean, and it did have the stipulation that if Cope and Cage didn't win, they had to disband as a tag team. Um, and the more shocking thing is it's been 25 years since they last held tag titles together.
That's crazy.
Um,
Were you surprised they won?
no, because again, the stipulation was if they lost, they had to break up as a team. They could never team again. And I think there are just too many tag teams for them to face that people want to see.
Mhm.
But what I was saying is it took 2 years to get to that point. It like one of the major complaints with TNA that I say fans, I'm going to say myself have had is that if somebody from WWE came in within a month, it seemed they were champion.
Right.
You know, you know, Samoa Joe goes on an 18-month undefeated streak. Kurt Angle comes in and immediately breaks it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know, in the terms of Sting didn't want to be champion. That was Tony Khan. I think the fan, wanted to put the title
Mhm.
on him um, as just like cementing him as the legend that he is.
Mhm.
But I mean, Sting was undefeated in his run in TNA or in AEW,
Mhm.
but he was never in really high profile
Right.
matches. It was
Did he have any
using him.
singles matches? I
Any
felt like he
what?
was in a lot. I don't think he had any singles matches, did he?
I
In
don't
a,
think so. I
yeah.
don't think so. But he was there to help get people over. But um, and I do think Tony does look at things more from a fan perspective than say what WWE does,
Mhm.
and looks at the legacy of someone coming in. Um, so I could see, to your point, I think I could see Tony maybe not putting the title on it, but giving Foley that. And
That's
I think Foley has said that he wants one more match,
yeah.
or he was trying to do that a few years ago, and then realized that he was just too out of shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something. I mean, somehow that is in my head. I could be
Yeah. You're
wrong.
right. You're right. Because that's why
Okay.
he lost the 100 pounds because he
Um,
felt like he was too out of shape to get in the ring and wrestle
you
again.
know. So again, I don't. Tony Khan keeps refusing to return my calls and texts, and so I don't know what his plans are for the future. But again, as a fan, I don't want to see Foley get in the ring. If he does get in the ring, am I going to stop watching AEW? No. Do I just hope that there is a good storyline reason for him to do it, other than just, hey, it's Mick Foley and he's going to wrestle again?
Yeah, because we know that the winner of the Owen gets the shot at Wembley, right? So we're not going
Yes.
to get Foley MJF unless MJF drops the belt between now and then. We know that's not likely to happen. That a championship match with Mick Foley would happen at Wembley Stadium.
Right. I mean,
Have you read any more about him? Is he? I know they put up the placard. Mick Foley is all elite. Was he on
mm,
Dynamite the other night?
he hasn't been on TV since
Okay,
this week, but
okay. And it's
yeah,
just week one, so okay.
yeah,
I wasn't sure how active he was going to be, or like you said, they were in New York. It was, Foley's hometown,
yeah.
basically.
Which
So,
in that regard, totally same but different. On Collision last night, they were in Huntsville, Alabama,
mhm.
and they paid tribute to Dennis Condrey.
Yeah.
It made me laugh because they had the little video package and talked about Dennis and Beautiful Bobby.
Uh-huh.
Um, but Dennis had been at AEW shows. They had him on air before, but they kept, would show photos of the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette. And I'm like, oh, Corny's going to love being on AEW TV this week.
I'll be curious to hear what he said because he is very obviously very critical of AEW, and
Yeah.
I think he was complimentary of I think it was Dax Harwood who started the GoFundMe for Dennis Condry's widow. So he does compliment when it's appropriate, I guess, for him.
Right.
I think part of that too is a character that he's playing on his podcast.
Right.
It clicks, but
Controversy creates cash.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Which is why I'm firing you from no. So but yeah, I think that it's inevitable. I think we both agree that it's inevitable that Foley is going to have some sort of
Physical
match, physical
Yeah.
event. Because did Max shove him at the event last week, or was that am I making that up?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't
They just got verbal with each other.
They got verbal with each other. Yeah. I want to say MJF ended up walking off, but again, I don't, because it was at the end of the pre-show. I wasn't fully invested. So
All right, all right. Well, and I we've had conversations about this before, and this kind of be the last talking point. But like the legends, Hulk Hogan, his last match ended up being we didn't know it was his last match. It was a TNA show. I think it was part of a six-man or a tag team match. Randy Savage, same thing. I think it was that match that I watched actually at your place when it was
with
he
TNA,
and
yeah.
AJ and someone against Jeff
Hall,
Jarrett. Who?
wasn't it Hall Nash and
Jarrett?
Savage?
Oh, was it Hall Nash and Savage? I thought AJ was involved in that somehow.
I mean, maybe Hall Nash and Savage against AJ. What's that? But it was like something where Savage came out like halfway through the match.
Yeah. And he like punched Double J in the head and pinned him.
Yeah, so I don't remember. I remember the story is that Savage apparently showed up and said that he should be champion. And
Yeah.
they said no.
But Piper, our favorites growing up, we didn't necessarily, and now that it's almost like this expectation that we get closure with everyone. We saw it with AJ, we saw it with John Cena, and I do think those guys are done. They're not going to come back and have another match. But do these legends? At what point do we? Because people criticize, well, John Cena's only 48, and he's done, and he had his last match, and look at Christian and Edge, they're 52, and I'm like, okay, but everybody ages differently. Everybody's body is, and Cope was gone for 9 years when they thought he was done. So it's like, when Jericho has his last match, will he have declared it being his, I think that as a fan, we do want that closure, but then also it's like, oh man, do we really want that closure? Because then we complain when we get it with John Cena because it wasn't the closure that the match didn't end the way that most of us wanted it to end. So it was a bad last match. But, will Foley get that closure, or will he continue to have that itch to get back in there and wrestle again?
Yeah. And I think also because I'm going to equate this with musical artist.
Yeah.
For example, as we're recording this, Rush is kicking off their tour this week here in LA. I think it was 10 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years. I saw Rush's final show at the same venue.
Yeah.
I saw Slayer's final show. Slayer is back on tour this year.
Yeah.
I was at Motley Crue's final show, All Bad Things Must Come to an End. Sadly, they are out there. And for the love of God, anybody that's going to that show, please take earplugs to block the sound from when they start playing or when the recordings start playing. So that, to me, I don't want necessarily a final match announcement
Hmm.
because I don't want the wrestler to tie themselves into, hey, I can't come back, or if I come back, I'm going against what I sold.
Yeah.
Especially given the price of tickets these days. I I think the tickets for John Cena's final match were, thousands of dollars, which
Yeah.
granted that's just WWE right now, but the prices were higher probably because it was going to be his final match. It's something that they could market and sell. So then if you do that and then come back, that it does leave a bad taste in the fans' mouth. But at the same time, do you want to know you're never going to see somebody again? You
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So, do you just say, hey, it's I'm not calling it a final match, but don't expect to see me anytime soon.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how you don't disappoint the fans in that regard, but I don't think you should. I don't think we need a promotion of a final match anymore. I think it's especially given Goldberg, Cena, uh, AJ in the span of a year.
Right.
It just becomes. It seems more like a marketing ploy than an actual.
Sure. Well, I mean, hell, I think 2025 success for the part of it, maybe a big
Mhm.
part, it was
Mhm.
hinging it on or hanging the hat on it being the John Cena retirement tour
Yeah.
because you have a new shirt in every market. There are all those opportunities. Now, obviously, not every superstar is going to get that treatment. I mean, John Cena is one of those generational guys that comes along, but eventually Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes and The Rock, I assume, will probably still have one last match.
Mhm.
There's still and it feels like there's more in that pipeline
Yeah.
compared to what it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, where guys would come and go and you'd see them then maybe go on the indies or whatever. But I could see there being a big surge and people love nostalgia. So Conrad has joked about the domain Jeff Jarrett's last match and Mick Foley's last match, but on his podcast. And I say joke, but I think again, it's part of that bit. I bet if you look
Mhm.
now to try to buy that domain, it would not be available
So
because
let me you
they buy those things up.
yeah, you bring that up at the Double or Nothing, I guess, media post show scrum.
Uh-huh.
Somebody asked Tony Khan, said something like, "There's no major American wrestling show
Mhm.
in March of 2026, 27."
Yeah.
And Tony Khan said, "Yet,
Hmm.
would you? Do you think that could be something? Maybe not. I mean, I guess it would be if Tony Khan's going to be involved, it's probably going to be an AEW show.
Hmm.
But would it be something big if they could promote something multi-company wise with some indies and build something for Foley's last match during WrestleMania season, not at WrestleMania, not at one of AEW's bigger shows? Do you think that is a possibility?
Yes. Well, I say that so quickly because Jeff Jarrett and Conrad on Jeff. Do you listen? You don't probably listen to any
I
of
don't
them.
listen to podcasts.
So they have been talking and teasing for a while now, and it's been based around the whole fact that Mania is going to be in Saudi, of doing something stateside that week as well. I don't know if they go head to head, but with it being Saudi, WrestleMania will be in the afternoon.
Mhm.
They do something that night. But again, we talk about fan fatigue. It's going to be interesting to see. But yes, I do think there are plans in the works, and announcements will be made sooner rather than later. Because I think they were kind of feeling it out too to see with the conflict in Iran if WrestleMania really does happen. But I think Night of Champions is supposed to be in Saudi next month, in June. I say next month. By the time the show drops, it will be June. So I think later in June, WWE is headed to Saudi, and they don't have any plans to not go and do that show. So it's funny. I joked with my wife. Our friends are he's a diehard Lions fan, and they're going to Germany in
Mm.
November. The Lions are playing in Germany, and so I told my wife we were at a wedding last night. I said, "Hey, WrestleMania is in Saudi next year. We're going to Saudi Arabia." I'm kidding, of course. You couldn't pay me to go into that area of the world at this point with things going on. But anyway, yeah, I do think Tony Khan and Conrad and Jeff Jarrett are working on something, but I don't know if it'll be an AEW. I think it'll be an AEW led event, but there will be several indie-rific
Mm.
performances as a part of this, I think. And yeah, it would make sense for that to be because Conrad keeps saying he thinks Mick Foley's going to have a last match. So I think yes, that would be the most logical place for all that to happen because we're still what 8 or 9 months
Yeah.
away. You've got the time to build and to lead into that, and then pivot in case WWE decides, oh no, we're not going to go overseas. We're going to have this in um, New Orleans or wherever. So
Mhm.
they've
What
also
if they?
talked about the dual nights. Saturday night it's in Saudi and Sunday night it's
Mhm.
in New Orleans, or doing the simulcast. And I say they
Mhm.
talk. This is the chatter that I hear on the
Mhm.
podcast. Nothing from WWE, of course.
Yeah. Which speaking of that, I did see that AAA's Triple Mania is now 2 nights, and they just announced previously had announced night two was going to be in Mexico, and they announced last night the night one is in
LA.
Las Vegas.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I did see that.
Which I'm
Yes.
like, did we not just learn that? I don't know where. I'm guessing T-Mobile Arena. I didn't see which venue, but
Yeah.
it's like, all right, whatever. If this hypothetical show goes off, how about a last match triple threat? Foley, Flair, Jarrett.
Oh boy. Nate is going through some stuff, as you know.
Yeah, I was going to joke. Normally you ask me what's going on in my world at the start of the show,
Yeah.
and you didn't do that this week. You totally ruined my
I
plan.
had the sock joke lined up.
You had this suck joke. I was going to say, I'm starting this new venture. It's fashion. Where for it's going to be like if you want to be the man, you got to be styling with flair. It's going to be a whole. And again, we've joked about it and we've talked off camera. Flair is our biggest, probably our biggest hero growing up, or the one that got us into wrestling. I just feel sad for the man right now, and I hope whatever is going on. As we discussed a few weeks ago, I think he is so wrapped up in being Ric Flair
Yeah.
that I don't think he knows who Richard Fleer is anymore.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely. Yes. Well, we hate to end it on a sad, not sad, but it is. We have empathy and we feel for the
yeah,
guy. He's been through a lot professionally and personally. So respect and love to Ric Flair
I'll
and
just say real quick
yeah.
with the story going on. Did you see the photos of David Flair, like the recent photos?
I think so. Yeah, he's
I would not have recognized him as.
unrecognizable. Yeah,
I'm like that's my cousin. Like that's.
definitely. Yeah, he does not look like he looked in the WCW glory days, if you will.
Yeah.
But again,
And then I was trying to figure out who his wife is, since she
oh yeah,
apparently has some legacy of success, but I don't know what
yeah.
that means. Um, yeah, so to end this on a non-negative or downer note, as I said, we're recording before Clash in Italy. We didn't talk about it, so I'll just get your quick predictions for the title matches.
Is Jacob able to wrestle? The last I saw, he was
Um,
hurt, and the match might not happen, or the match in that incarnation. So,
yeah.
to me, if they were going to put it on Jacob now, why did they take it off? Unless it was to tell this story of the bloodline and doing it
Mhm.
that way. But you know, Punk, I know he talked at the fight with Ronda Rousey a couple weeks ago. So I mean, he's still representing WWE out and about, but because I think there was some commentary on, he's done or he's leaving or whatever. I don't think that's the case. Um, I would not be upset if they went with Jacob, but to me, it almost feels too soon. But is it? I don't know. He's established himself as a star. Um, I can't imagine Roman flying halfway around the world to lose. Um, so yeah, I see Roman somehow retaining, and if the match even actually happens. So
And
what was the other? Oh, Cody and Gunther. I think Gunther's going to win. Uh, Freshen things up on that side of the show. Um, Oba and Brock, are we going to get the typical 50-50 booking with WWE and Brock wins this one and then we do SummerSlam and a big send off? I think they kind of, and I don't know what the plan was at WrestleMania, but I think they screwed it up. I don't think if they knew Brock was coming back,
Mhm.
because to me, because there is talk that SummerSlam is going to be his last match. Why not?
Speaking of retirement matches
Yeah,
and
why
final
not have
matches,
just
yeah.
saved all of that? Um,
Mhm.
because to me, it's diminished the impact of Oba winning and winning
Mhm.
the way he did. If Brock would have gone off into the sunset after that, maybe have him come back on Raw the night after and say his goodbye. To me, it has again, this is my opinion. It has hurt the Oba overall
Yeah.
story with him coming back as quickly as he did too. Maybe a month before SummerSlam,
Mhm.
he pops back in and we do the match at SummerSlam. But I don't know. I think that they had an opportunity with that, and again, it's diminished in my opinion. What about you?
Um,
I don't even know what other matches are happening. So those are the
Sol Ruka and Becky
oh.
Lynch, um, which
I like Soul
again,
Rooter, but I think she's still green
I
and
like. I'm just, my complaint is if Jessica Carr is the referee,
right.
why do we just drop that storyline? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I with the stipulation being if Jacob loses, he has to be Roman's servant. I guess. I mean, that's a trope we really haven't seen much since the late '80s, early '90s, maybe. So I guess time to bring it back. But again, I don't care for Roman Reigns in any regard. I have zero interest in anything he does.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, I would like to see Jacob win just for something different. Cody and Gunther, sure. You put the title on Gunther, and then what? But then you keep it on Cody. I mean, I guess Cody and Sammy are kind of feuding or having a falling out. I don't. So I expect Sammy to somehow cost Cody the title, but um, but again, Cody just won the title, so why take it off? But
Right.
again, as long as you have a story in place and you know what's going to happen following that, sure, whatever. And then I'm with you. I think Brock coming back, and I didn't see the video that they played, so I don't know what Brock said. But if Brock was coming back to be like, after I got beat up Mania, I realized maybe I can't hang. It's my time to go out, ride into the sunset. But then after being at home and thinking about it, I got pissed off that I lost
Mhm.
this way, and I
Right.
want
Yeah.
some revenge. Like that's a story that I'd be like, okay, maybe then I could see
Yeah.
Brock coming back.
Sure.
But just to come back, and especially if they do 50-50 booking to lead into it's like it totally kills it. And I think, as I mentioned to you before, the fact that after Mania they haven't really done anything with Oba except
Mhm.
have him beat up not even mid carders, low
Mhm.
card guys. It's like, I think he should have won the IC title at least.
Mhm.
or been there. So I don't know. We'll see.
We will
I'm
see.
sure the Italian crowd. I'm sure the Italian crowd will be loud and boisterous, and hopefully everybody that paid for the pasta making experience with the WWE superstar had a good time.
Exactly, exactly. We hope you had a good time as well. Friends, we will see you next week.